So hello everyone and welcome to another session of Live with Ben. This is our first for this year's celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. As a proud Latina, I'm extremely honored to be moderating this panel with this incredible group of fellow Latinos and experts in the Latin music world. There's no denying that Latin music has steadily become one of the biggest music genres in the world. Music has always been a huge passion pillar for the Latino community, but it's officially gone global and gone mainstream. Its artists, songs, brand partnership opportunities are not to be overlooked. So here to chat a bit more about that is Canessa. She's founder of TS Collective. She represents some of the biggest names right now in the industry, like Residente, Anuel AA, Maluma. We have Frankie. He's the president of a brand new agency that he's going to chat to us a little bit about, representing artists such as Blessed. But in his past roles, he has worked with some of the largest names in the industry, such as Bad Bunny, Mark Anthony, Maluma, Weezing, CNCO. And then we have Melanie. She's the senior director of brand partnerships for the Latin Recording Academy, the Latin Grammys. So thank you all for being here. Melanie, especially you, with all the Latin Grammy nominations happening today, we really appreciate your time today to chat with us. So if anyone has any questions or comments during the panel, please drop them in the comment box to the right, and we will get to them towards the end of the panel. So let's get things started. I'm going to open this one up to everyone. Just if you can talk to us a little bit about your role, how long you've been in the industry, kind of how you got your start in the industry, that would be great for everyone to know. Who wants to start? Canessa, you want to start?
Okay. So my name is Canessa Tixi. I am the founder of TS Collective. We are a brand management and PR and cross-marketing agency. I've been in the industry for 22 years. I started when I was 16 as a publicist assistant at City Hall for the Giuliani administration, and easily went and weed out of politics. I went into entertainment, and ever since then did a little bit of everything. Started my agency about 7 years ago, and the focus of my agency was always to represent our culture globally. So my goal and my main accomplishment was to represent Latin artists or talent in the urban space and make them global. So right now, that's exactly what we're accomplishing, and I'm very excited.
Great. Frankie?
Hi, first off, let me apologize. I'm in Medellin, Colombia, and I don't know how the signal is, so if I cut out. My name is Frankle Rodriguez. I just recently opened, I haven't even made it public yet, Franchise Entertainment, brand new boutique agency, where I will be announcing the roster soon. I can talk about one of them that I did sign, which is Blessed. Very excited about Blessed. He is totally taking Colombia by storm, and we've already got a lot of things happening internationally coming, including a U.S. tour, European tour, as well as some good festivals, Coca-Cola Flow Fest and Be With Us Urban Fest. Previously, so how I started, I come from the salsa world, actually. I used to manage an artist named Jay Rivera for 5 years. And then about 3 years ago, I got in the urban space working at CMN, Caldenas, where I got to work with a really good roster of artists and learn from Henry Caldenas and from Giovanna Perez. And then from there on, I went to Walter Combe. I got to learn a lot from Walter and Carlos Pinilla and everybody over there. We had Maluma and seen a lot of good things. And I'm just excited to go on my own and try to create something different.
Wonderful. We can't wait until you announce the roster and we can start looking at brand opportunities there.
There you go.
Great. Melanie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Galarce. I have been with the Latin Recording Academy for the last 7.5 years. I am Senior Director of Business Development, which basically means that my role at the Academy is to ensure that we have sponsorships and partnerships for not just our flagship event, which is really what we're most known for, the annual Latin Grammy Awards. As Tiffany mentioned, we had a big day yesterday with our nominations announcement, but also not just for the award show, but also for all of the content opportunities and the digital programs that we do year round, as well as some ancillary events. Prior to that, I was on the spirits side, so always sort of on the brand side. Working on the sponsor side for the Academy, and that's sort of how I transitioned back to the Academy. But I'd say I have about 10 years of experience in the industry. There's always been some overlap in the entertainment industry, which makes me feel old.
Not at all. But all of you guys have been in the industry for a long time in different capacities, and we have seen how it has really, really changed. I would say in the last 3 to 5 years, especially there has been a huge boom of Latin music. Obviously, we all know the phenomenon of Despacito, and to an extent, this boom has been propelled by collaboration. So Frankie, Canessa, you guys work with these artists, day in, day out. Let's talk a little bit about this crossover strategy. What's your take on, US mainstream singers doing Spanish albums or doing, working in collaboration with big Latinx artists?
Well, I think, for me, the biggest thing has been the change in the fact, like you said, in the last 5 years or so, where I remember Latin artists reaching out to American artists and not getting the response. Now it's the roles have reversed. Now it's the American artists looking for the Latin artists. And I think the key to that has just been the growth of the genre and the space where there's just so much more reach now with the DSPs, with YouTube. It's the form of consumption that's commonly used, especially in Latin America, where the numbers are just massive. So, the numbers that the American artists are getting are mainly from Europe and from America, from the US. And now they're just trying to get that niche and get a foot in the door in Latin America. And that's what the Latin artists bring to that. And it's just good to be able to have that connection now where, Latin music is considered on the forefront of the global spectrum, not just something in the back that was just a phase, but it's something that's here to stay.
Yeah, I agree. Years ago, you always had the Latin artists wanting to be like the American rappers, trying to catch up to their style, to their flow. Now they have the same chains, the same cars, the same beats. It's just in different languages. But I agree with Frankie. I think the Latin industry has created this boom, but it came from Europe and the Middle East. They've easily been open to our music and accepting, and those numbers obviously have skyrocketed where now America has tuned in. I think we're gonna see another big boom in China. You have like folks like Maluma and Bad Bunny that in Asia, they love them. And they're starting to love Asian music the way they love salsa many ages ago. So I think we're gonna see a very big effect coming bigger than what it is now.
That's very exciting, and we can't wait to see kind of what happens there because, again, the industry has changed so much in the last couple of years that we can only imagine what it's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's great, and similarly to the music side, we've also seen a huge boom on the Latin TV and movie content. We obviously saw In the Heights, and there's much like that coming in the pipeline. With these new opportunities in this other sector of the entertainment world, are we seeing more opportunities for music artists to get more exposure through acting or participating in the soundtrack? Is it truly becoming like a 360 thing where TV and music are just being rising up to, global exposure?
Yeah, I personally just representing Latin actors and musicians. When I started with Dasha 6, 7 years ago during Orange is the New Black, no one knew who she was, but people were so invested in her look and how they can connect to her look, her story, how she got discovered. And I think that's what's happening now, that people in both industries, Hollywood and in the music industry, are invested in the person's brand. And that's why there's so many opportunities now, because it's more than just the look, it's the story behind it, the struggles, how they came up, what are their interests. Musicians and actors are turning into entrepreneurs, where they're just dabbling into other things. Like I have all my clients, one owns a basketball team in Puerto Rico, the other one, now he's a film director, residente, he transitioned, so they're all turning into just, multitasking entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about soundtracks? Obviously, I would, off the top of my head, the biggest thing that I can think of is obviously the J Balvin song in the SpongeBob, movie. But are we seeing more and more that, people are tapping into Latin songs for, their movies, their TV shows as well?
I think it's just bridging a gap. You know, what I'm most excited about, Carlos Vives actually has something coming out now with Disney and animation, which is basically talking about the culture of Colombia. So it's not, Latin music has made the transition from not just being about the music, but being a culture. And there's a lot of artists like J Balvin and Bad Bunny, and that's what they talk about, is about the culture. So the music is what started it. And so the natural progression now is TV and the film coming into play, and brands are using that and taking advantage, saying, okay, how do we connect with the fan base in Colombia or in Peru or in some of these other countries to or somewhere that maybe those TV shows weren't working there previously, and now they see that connection. So it's just natural. It's going to happen, and that's a sector that's going to explode soon, just in the Latin culture. And you see it already on Netflix. A lot of shows from Spain, a lot of shows from Mexico that didn't get treadway in the U.S. before now are starting to become common. So it's an exciting time to be in Latin music right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with, just to add to what Frankie's saying, I think on the brand side, I think brands are really fully embracing the opportunity to work with the Latin music genre, right? Like I think brands have caught on to the fact that music is a key component to our culture, to what Frankie was saying, and that it's exploded over the last few years. I think all brands and even social media platforms are really excited to explore this space. I mean, when I'm usually, talking to brands, I say music itself is a universal language, and it's an incredibly powerful passion point, right? And one that really unites, whereas maybe some other ones like sports can cause some friction or division. This is the one that does quite the opposite. And the data around this is crazy, right? Like I was reading something the other day to the point that the Hispanic, music listeners, so much more savvy than maybe your general market music lover. Something to the effect that like a U.S. Hispanic music fan listens to like 32 hours of music a week, and that 90% of that is done on like a streaming platform, which just goes back to what was said, right? Like it has made our music so accessible to where, someone like Maluma is relevant in Asia. That's wild. But I think Hispanics are definitely one of the most engaged music fans, and on the brand side, I think they've caught on to that, and they definitely want to be part of the action.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of streaming platforms, obviously, all of these streaming platforms from a music perspective are playing a key role in increasing the exposure. Is there a specific streaming platforms that you guys feel are doing like an amazing job increasing that exposure, especially, I mean, not only for the established artists, but the up and comers?
Well, I mean, I think all the DSPs are doing a fantastic job in their own little niche areas. Obviously Spotify is more of a global presence. Apple has a great presence over here. Audio Mac is one that's growing. Deezer's growing. But what I see the most from the DSPs that I'm really enjoying is just the amount of promotions and visual supports that they're giving Latin artists. To think that one Latin artist would have a billboard in Times Square was something 4 years ago that nobody thought could happen. And now you're seeing it on a regular basis where they're taking that time, and instead of promoting a general market act, they're putting up and coming talent. It's not just, the heavyweights of the world. They're actually taking the time out to bet on artists like Blessed, who's had a billboard there. Spotify did it in Mexico City as well, promoting Blessed and other up and coming artists projected on a big building over there. So that's just something that's in it's exciting time for people like myself, which, my job is to find good venues for these artists to perform at, good festivals, and that all is how the DSPs are doing. So I definitely appreciate the support.
To add to that, I think the platforms have, like, when I started 22 years ago, it was mainly faxing pitches to the media, picking up the phone. Now I'm seeing myself speaking to the podcast at Spotify to get one of my clients interviewed, or even for, Ebro with Apple Music for them to get an interview. So I think that the platforms are also turning into a media channel for these artists across the board. So I think it's an interesting time.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And with that, let's switch it over and talk a little bit about brand partnerships. Obviously, that's what we do at Ben, right? Connecting brands to their consumers through the power of popular entertainment. And one of our big verticals is music. So let's chat about brand partnerships in general. Let's start with a question that I think it's so important and often overlooked is, for you guys, how important is it for a brand to bet on an artist early on in their career? Because we see often, the brands saying like, oh, we want to partner with a, Latin artist, but it needs to have a global appeal or a mainstream appeal. But how important is it for a brand to take risk with those up and comers?
I think it's very important. Like when I started with Maluma 3.5 years ago, he had his own phenomenon, but it wasn't easy to pitch him to a brand or to the media, and they didn't understand it. All they saw was that he had the largest amount of followers on Instagram. That was interesting, but it was definitely knocking on their doors and telling them his story, what his interest was, what his passion was, where he's headed, and they started just investing in the personal story, like I said before, where now we've done stuff with Balmain and other collaborations that are coming out across the board. But I think it's very important because they need to understand the culture through these new artists coming up. I think they're a very good tool to have brands understand, because even though they have all the statistics and all the studies that brands do, you're going straight to the source, which is the team, which is the artist. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the Academy side, I can tell you that this can be a game changer, right? For us specifically at the Academy, the Best New Artist category is like one of the most coveted by brands. Like it's just, for several reasons, right? One of these being exactly that you're catching an artist early on in their career. For the most part, they have no existing endorsements, or, they're new, they're excited, they're accessible. And the Latin Grammy is like such a pivotal moment in their career that, brands are hungry to work with them. I think, it works both ways. And like to Vanessa's point, you have to leverage this because these are the superstars of tomorrow, right? Like Maluma was once a BNA, Juanes came out of this category. And I can tell you a personal anecdote. When I worked on the spirit side, there was 10 years ago, there was an up and coming artist who was so hungry to work with brands, specifically a whiskey brand that was successful in Latam, but we were hoping to launch in the US back in those days. And this artist was just so accessible, like hungry, like put your product in my music video. Like his team was all about, we're going to make this happen. Like, and fast forward 10 years later, this young artist is now J Balvin, and he's still very, very much tied to this brand, right? There was loyalty created because they believed in him before he became J Balvin, right? So I think it's a gamble, but I think if done right, it has a huge payoff in the long run from the brand perspective.
Yeah.
And, for me to add in there now, and I could talk about it because I see it with Blessed here. I think the brands are trying to find opportunities in movements, not necessarily just artists. Right now in Medellin out here, there's such a huge movement going on that's about to go global. I mean, we're replicating now basically when Balvin and Nicki and Maluma and Carol were just starting to come up. There's a good number of artists here in Medellin that are making an impact. And you're not only seeing it when the cars go by playing the music, you're seeing it in the way that people are dressing right now. right now, what's hot over here, believe it or not, it's not Gucci, it's not Prada, it's Nike. You see everybody in Air Jordans and the Nike track fits, and that's just because of the movement that's going on. So now is the perfect time for those brands to get involved and say, okay, there's a movement going on in Colombia. How do we get involved early? How can we benefit this? Is that something where that movement that's happening in Medellin, can we take that global and help advance that? Dominican Republic, there's a movement going on right now. Dobo Montana out of New York, he's doing really good. So it's a good opportunity to identify them early and latch on and just grow with the artists, just like you mentioned, Melanie, with Balvin. And there's so much new going on right now that the space is there. It's just taking a risk, and most are going to pan out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking of taking a risk, obviously you guys work with a lot of urban artists, and reggaeton in general is huge part of the Latin music genre. Are brands afraid to work with urban artists due to the lyrics or the stigma of the genre that was once there, or has that officially kind of gone away since a lot of these artists have now gone mainstream?
I think it's gone away by a little bit. I think what I'm noticing with brands, like I represent J.I., Prince of New York. He's 19, and he's a hip hop artist, but he's Latin. I think he's one of the type of artists that brands don't understand because he has his movement with the younger crowd, and I think brands are trying to understand the younger crowd because they're all over the place with their interest. So I'm seeing that. Mainly on my end. But yeah, I don't know if you guys wanted to add anything else. Kind of lost my train.
Yeah, I think it depends on the brand profile, right? Like sometimes they're a bit more risque and they're willing, they're a bit more willing to work with these artists, and sometimes it just doesn't really fit the consumer profile. So I mean, I think if the brand really understands their consumer and they feel that maybe touching into this genre won't necessarily divert attention or cause bad media, I think they're willing to take the risk. And I think specifically now, like you said, Tiffany, it's just such a huge genre. It's like a crossover now, like everyone is interested in working with these people. I think they're a little more flexible and willing to maybe tap into something that in the past they wouldn't have otherwise.
Agree.
Yeah, and I mean that's great. I mean, again, because it's a huge genre, and for I remember back 3 to 5 years ago, brands were really concerned about lyrics, but I think we've gotten past that point, which is really good because in the U.S. side, if you compare, which it's not comparable apples to apples, but if you compare it to the hip hop world, you're seeing the massive collaborations that are happening in that genre and with those artists. With a lot of brands. So I'm happy to hear from you guys that, it's kind of happening the same in the Latin world as well.
And I wanted to say something else. I think the cool thing that we're seeing is that brands are giving these artists creative control as well, which is very important. And I think that's impressive because before and years ago, many brands wouldn't let go of their brands like that. But they want to understand and want to connect with people on social media, and the artist knows their audience best. So I think that's a really cool thing that they're doing now too.
Yeah.
Great. And I have a quick question that I've always had it in the back of my mind. When you're working with brands, do you see and feel the difference when a brand rep is Latino or understands the culture more so than if it's just a brand rep, that's maybe not?
I can speak to that. Absolutely. Like, Frankie, you could go first if you want, but yes.
Oh, no, that's what I was going to say. It's a lot easier when it is a Latino, even though, and the reason I say this is because a lot of times they're already fans of the artist, so that they understand what the artist is trying to accomplish. As to if it's somebody that doesn't listen to the genre, they're just looking at numbers and not necessarily understanding the product.
Yeah, I agree. It's exciting when they are, and we have to fight the heads of corporate together and have them understand and have the artists do things that probably they don't want to do, but they help get the job done for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is also like a game changer here. I mean, we've worked with brands in the past who I've worked personally with brands in the past who are working with us just to check off that Latinx multicultural box, right? Like it's because they have dollars against it and they have to sort of check off the box. But they maybe not speak the language. They don't really understand the cultural differences, which are huge, right? Like you can't compare a Hispanic from Colombia to a Hispanic from Dominican Republic. I mean, just the cultural differences there are so huge. So I feel like when someone maybe is not as close to our community, they execute like these really top line vague campaigns, which is a shame, I feel, because music in itself is really used as a platform to create some sort of emotional connection. So I think the brands that really understand the community and that who take the time to like authentically understand the culture, the people, what you're trying to do, and craft out this message well, I think ultimately that's what makes a successful partnership. And to someone's point, I can't remember who said this, but I think the consumer really appreciates this, because there's some authenticity to it, and I think that's to your point why a lot of brands feel a bit more comfortable giving control over now to the artists, because that's how really you make that connection with consumer, right? And I think if the brand does their homework and executes correctly, I think that's ultimately reflected in how the consumer spends their money, right? So I think it's like a full 360. Like if the brand rep and the brand is doing their job, the consumer is going to feel more tied to that. It's going to have a bigger affinity to it. And that's where ultimately the money goes to, right? It's success all around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because we're talking about brands, but even as a publicist with the media, like before at Rolling Stone, you didn't have a Spanish reporter. At the New York Times, you didn't have a Spanish reporter writing about music. So I think even when I see a reporter that's Spanish in some of these publications, I get super excited because I don't have to triple pitch them and educate them. They get it, they understand, and their jobs are harder internally more than brands with the media because a lot of those head editors don't understand our culture really well. But kudos to all those reporters, Spanish reporters too.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so I think Melanie or Frankie, you mentioned, that a lot of brands are just looking at numbers, right? Because the numbers are there from a streaming perspective, the video views, the social media following. What else can we do to educate brand reps, whether they're Latino or not, with, perhaps someone that's not as familiar with the genres and the artists? Like, what can we be doing more to educate them and really push forward more brand partnerships with this genre?
I think the biggest thing and is just identifying to make sure that you're, instead of just looking at the numbers and saying, oh, they've got this country, they've got this reach. What is their message? Does it tie in with the brand? It's very important, not only for the brand, but for the artist to identify and say, okay, this is a brand that I feel strong about. This is a brand that I see wearing. This is something that I can get behind and support, and that my fans are going to get behind and support. Because sometimes if you're just doing a brand partnership because you're looking at a paycheck, or like Melanie said, they're looking to check off a box, it's probably not going to be a successful campaign either way for the brand or for the artist. And I can tell you from being at the previous agencies and seeing deals coming in, there was a lot of times that deals were turned down because of that, just because it didn't fit the artist's brand, what they were trying to do, even though the brand wanted them. It wasn't something that was going to help the artist passionate about or accomplish to connect with their fans. And sometimes you just got to say no and walk away from those.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in on this one? Nope. Yeah. Okay. And right now we mentioned, obviously this is a huge genre, but for the past, again, 3 to 5 years, it was really hard. People were trying to really compare the U.S. side to the Latin side, kind of apples to apples, right? And so, do you believe we're in a point where we're being valued the same, or do you believe that the perception of artistry and the value of brand partnerships are still different for Latinos than US mainstream artists? I don't know who wants to take this one. I know it's a tough one.
I think there's still work to be done, to be honest with you, because we're kind of getting the same treatment, but if you lift up the hood, we're probably not getting the same amount of pay when we have bigger numbers and bigger streams. So that's a whole other issue there. That's kind of my two cents for this question. I think if you lift up the hood, the requirements are different, the pay is different. So
I mean, yeah, that's it. That's a really good point. I mean, we see it on the budget side too, right? Like, you know, we at the Latin Grammys, again, because we're sort of checking off for the US Hispanic portion, sometimes the brands don't have the budgets that they would otherwise if they're doing some general market campaigns, or some of our other counterparts. But yeah, I definitely see it on the brand side as far as like budget, and education, right? Like I think again, we've spoken about this, and it seems to be a recurring theme, but educating really the brands and the people behind these brands, how important, how powerful the Latin music genre has become, and what a driver it is. You know, like even speaking of those streaming platforms, you know, if you look at the top artists played in the last year, you'll always find one or two Hispanic artists, which is wild because it's a different language, right? It's so incredibly impressive. So I think, yeah, I definitely think we have a ways to go.
Yeah, and I want to add that it's also kind of disheartening when you're trying to push our culture through the brand and they're like, let's just wait for Hispanic Heritage Month. And it's more of like, and I know we're celebrating it and that's all great, but that's not just the only time of the year to celebrate us. You know, our stories are so rich, it should be all year round. And that's the part that I feel we need to work on with the brands more. It's not just Hispanic Heritage Month.
I completely agree, because I know my inbox has been flooded by all the Hispanic Heritage Month initiatives. But to your to your point, we are here year round. The artists are producing amazing work year round. So we should definitely push for those brand partnerships and for everything to happen year round as well. Perfect. And so, kind of closing off the brand partnerships conversation, would like to hear from all of you kind of interesting brand partnerships you've done, or more, or even ideas that you have for brands that have yet to do things that maybe this conversation could spark an idea for someone listening that's from the brand side, to do something with one of your artists.
I can talk a little bit about that on the Academy side. I mean,
Yeah.
I think everyone here probably shares these sentiments, but since the pandemic happened, I think it just completely forced us to redefine ourselves, to accelerate innovation, to figure out, specifically in live music, how a lot of our experiences would sort of go into this digital virtual space. So as an Academy, sharing what we've done in the last year and a half, last April, we put together this really robust offering of, fun and exciting and really comprehensive digital opportunities that we essentially went to market with, right? So over the last year and a half, we launched things like our Latin Grammy Acoustic Session franchise, which was this really like intimate, private 300-person concert, now into the virtual space, right? So now we have virtual acoustic sessions where we have thousands of fans logging in through a social platform. And then we've gone really creative with like our diversity and inclusion initiatives too. So for example, we teamed up with a global brand earlier this year to celebrate International Women's Month through a content series. And the intent was to try and highlight like a series of firsts at the Latin Grammys for women. So the first time a woman won in the urban category, and the first time a woman was awarded the Person of the Year award. And like other milestone moments for these women. So I think we've evolved significantly over the last year and a half. I think we've tapped into like tons of opportunities. I think the biggest shift really has been that we as an Academy have had the chance to see ourselves as content creators, which was a first for us. And in doing so, we've been able to reach definitely a more global audience and engage with fans, I feel, in a more authentic way. And then the most interesting thing about this is that I think the new normal is a hybrid, right? So like we have brands now that are saying, I want to have 2 acoustic sessions prior to the Latin Grammy Awards, but I also want to sponsor the Latin Grammy Awards. So it's like this hybrid experience and offering of the virtual, things that we're offering, but also the on-site things. And I actually think that might be our new normal moving forward.
Yeah, I agree that the pandemic has definitely changed things where brands have become more open. I think some of the cool things I've worked on that has kind of disrupted conversations has been like I managed and did the PR for Elon Musk's mom, May Musk, and she was the first cover girl at 67. And once she became cover girl, like a lot of the conversation about targeting older women changed. You saw women with white hair in campaigns and runways, and not just that, but she made it all about make it that being getting old was cool because you had more wisdom, and where the younger generation was kind of obsessed with her. Some other stuff is luxury brands are also have been more open. I recently, a year ago, did a campaign for Christian Louboutin, and we had Puff's son, Quincy, direct their first digital campaign. And they've never done that. They had never given anybody, Mr. Louboutin had never given anyone creative control, and it worked. And we had been renewed so many times with them. But those are different kind of conversations that you're having with brands where they want to be more open. They want to target people differently. They want to, give the torch to the artist or the person. And then some of these things just really change the narrative on what some stigmas have been.
Yeah. Absolutely. Frankie, any interesting brand partnerships you're doing now or that you've done in your previous roles that you want to share?
It's just trying to find creative new ways of reaching the masses, right? I think the traditional ways and Canessa could speak to this because she's done a lot of huge deals. When I was at Walter Coleman, I know she did a lot of stuff for Maluma. But I think there's a lot more opportunities for brands to take advantage of the music part. Maybe with single release parties, virtual parties that have become accustomed. It's just finding a way to reach them at the core when the new music is coming out and being attached to it. I know that there are some brands that reach out to artists and asking them to mention them in the song. So that's something that's becoming new that people are taking advantage of. But I think it's just finding more creative ways to align with the music and not just on the fashion or the TV.
That's really interesting. The song mention or integration into the song lyrics. How open are artists to doing that? Because I know it might feel like you're taking a little bit of a license creatively, but are they more and more open to doing that?
They are. It's more frustrating when they already recorded the record and they already have a company in there. It's like, could you have told me this beforehand so I could reach out? But they're seeing it. They're doing it.
Yeah, we had Maluma do Michelob. That relationship just has flourished throughout the years, but he did a song for the brand and he got to partner with the sun, the frequency of the sun. And it was different for him to write that song and create the song with Edgar Barrera and the team, because here you had the frequencies of the sun and you had to create a song about the sun and being joyful for the brand. So that, it challenges them as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting for us, especially again, as Ben, we do brand integrations across all verticals. So just knowing that, more and more opportunities are opening up, especially in the music side, which has always been a part of the industry that has had so many legs, right? You could do tours, you could do music videos, you could do the social piece, digital concerts, but now knowing that this is becoming a bigger thing where brands can really own part of a song, it's pretty cool. And so just to switch it up now, let's look at kind of the future of the industry. And I know none of us have a crystal ball, and again, the industry has changed so much in the last 3 to 5 years that I don't even know where we're going to be 3 to 5 years from now. But what are you seeing in terms of emerging genres or subgenres within the industry. Anything exciting that you want to share for people to take, kind of note of?
I spoke to this earlier, but I think there's two really big movements happening right now, which is the Dembow movement is starting to go very commercial in marketing. El Alfa now is able to do shows in Latin America, and you've got a genre that's exploding there outside of the Dominican Republic. Ed Cherry, Doba Montana, Kiko y Crazy. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of there that brands are really going to. I think once they see Kiko y Crazy, if you haven't seen him, definitely take a look at Kiko. He's a character, but brands will be shocked about him and Chetty, but they bring good value and something different. As well over here in Colombia, the movement is very strong, what's happening in Medellin, and it's going to take the spotlight. And now's the time where brands have to really look at those movements going on and attach themselves. And they're going to help them get it global a lot quicker than when it's going to happen.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I think you're gonna start seeing more in Asia of us. I think we're seeing a lot of movement there. Me personally, with some of my artists right now, they're Latin, they're dominating the genre, but they're trying to cross over into the hip hop side. So there will be genre crossovers happening, and that strategically has to be done so people understand in those genres where they came from. So I think you'll see a lot of that too.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, for the longest time, Latin music had been kind of, crossing over to more of that pop, genre in the US. So the fact that they're moving towards hip hop, I can't wait to see what those songs are going to look like, what those collaborations are going to look like. And then Frankie, it's funny that you're in Colombia because obviously, Colombia has quickly become like a huge hub, especially for reggaeton and urban music. How are you seeing, kind of the trends that are happening in Colombia? How are you seeing them coming into the US? Are they taking a shorter time to, make their way into the US, the artists, the songs, the trends that you're seeing there? I guess the gap shortly.
Oh, significantly. Previously with music, it was whatever was hot in the United States trickled down to Latin America. And now over the last, especially last 3 years, it's instead of coming up from there, coming down, now it's going from here, coming up. So, you've got salsa in Peru, for instance. Salsa is very prevalent over there, and it's a market that, brands, if they're looking for the Peruvians, that's a genre that they can attach to in Peru that's working. They listen to salsa in Peru just like they do reggaeton in Colombia. And those things now, you're hearing salsa artists from Peru making noise in the United States, like Jaira Plasencia, Cielo Torres. But I think just it's changed in that aspect where coming from South America, the movements start here, and then people move over there or they move to Europe, and they're taking that culture with them, and it's bringing it to different markets. So yeah, it's growing a lot faster than previously.
Amazing. Great. Well, that was kind of all the questions that we have. And if we can recap everything that we've said, basically, obviously, we know that the market is huge. There's so many brand opportunities, but brands really need to embrace not only, the numbers, right, that are there clearly, but, the story behind the artist, what they're trying to convey, and overall the culture, which it's funny because it's such a divided culture. There's so many pieces of who we are as Latinos that not a lot of people understand. But yeah, definitely embracing what makes us one, because music is that, like Melanie said, that unifying language for us, and definitely brands should look at Latin music, should look at the artist, should look at the songs with a closer lens as they're trying to reach this community, but not just during Hispanic Heritage Month, which is great, but year round. So I think it's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation, to have with you guys. I think we do have one question from the audience. Sophie said, would you suggest it's best to stick to one genre until real traction is built and then expand?
I think so. I think we all have to start somewhere. You have to create your base to then grow out, so people can see the evolution of your artistry. That's just my opinion. You have to start somewhere. You have to start with a base.
Great. Well, thank you. Sophie, I hope that answered your question here. And yeah, I think everyone really enjoyed. I'm looking at the feedback from everyone that joined, and everyone seemed to enjoy the conversation. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope we can do more of these panels in the future, and we can't wait to do this a few years from now and look back and say, hey, we were talking about these trends 3 years ago. This is where the industry is now. So thank you again so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.